Good evening and welcome to the AAC's, what month is it? June program, LGBTQIA plus and individuals with autism. My name's Michael Morrier and I'm the program committee chair with the AAC board of directors. And just so to give a little background about the Atlanta Autism Consortium, we are a nonprofit organization dedicated to creating collaboration and conversations through the Metro Atlanta autism community, as well as going beyond that. Throughout the year, we host free programs just like this on a wide range of topics, and the entire AAC board of directors are so glad everyone has joined us tonight. Before we get started, just a few housekeeping notes. Just know all attendees, your microphone and cameras will remain muted, but you can ask questions you have throughout the program in the chat box at the bottom of your screen. We will be going through kind of like topic areas, and so we're going to try to hold questions until that topic area is done and every panelist that wants to speak has spoken, and then we'll go through and do the questions. If we don't get to it, we'll have time at the end as well to ask any questions we missed and those that come through. Additionally, this session is being recorded and will be posted on the AAC's YouTube channel in a few weeks, and we will email out notification of when it's available, as well as the contact information for all of the panelists and any information that they would like us to share with you to the email address that you registered for this program with, so that you can contact them directly if you have questions. Tonight, our panelists are Erin, Maurer, Matthew Montgomery, and Katie Weisberg. These three individuals have all volunteered their time to discuss their lived experiences of being LGBTQIA plus and autistic. And they're going to provide us with a lot of useful information that we can use as individuals, as providers, family members. And really, I'm excited to hear everything they have to say, because it really is a topic that is something I've recently gotten kind of interested in and involved in due to our first presenter, Rachel Osborne, who is going to be presenting on her honors thesis that she did while she was an undergraduate at Emory University. And she has presented some of this information recently at the International Meeting for Autism Researchers in Seattle. I think it
Yeah.
was Seattle. Yes,
Yeah.
last month. Rachel is a California native and an Emory University graduate, a current New Yorker, and she's a soon-to-be medical student at UC Davis School of Medicine. At Emory, she's conducted this research that she's going to be presenting on through the Emory Autism Center, where her honors thesis explored co-occurrent rates of autism and gender variance within diagnostic context. As I said, she has recently presented some of this work at the INSAR conference, and she looks forward to continuing her research as she embarks on her medical career. So I'm going to turn it over to Rachel and let her give her presentation, and I will be sharing her slides. And if she gives us permission, which I believe she will, we'll share these slides afterwards with the group to the email that you have provided. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's go, Rachel.
Thank you, Dr. Morrier, for that amazing introduction. Let me know when we see when the slides start up. All right, everyone able to see?
There.
All right, so I'll just give a little background. I started this research about 4 years ago, my sophomore year of college. The summer beforehand, I was a sleepaway camp counselor, and I had 3 kids, I think, who were both transgender and diagnosed with autism. And so I got curious what the co-occurrence rate was and found that there was very little online about that. So I decided to find out myself. So first of all, welcome everybody. Thank you, Erin, Dr. Morrier, and the AAC for having me and facilitating this panel. Today we're going to talk about autism and gender variance, co-occurrence rates, and the study that I used to do this, which was a survey analysis. So just a game plan here. We'll go through the intro, the methods, results, and discussions, and then we'll talk about the conclusion and answer any questions you may have. So for the purpose of this study, I chose to use the term gender variance. It's an umbrella term used to describe any variation between the sex assigned at birth and gender identity, expression, or behavior consistent with culturally defined and expected norms of the gender an individual is assigned at birth. So we chose to use this particular terminology as opposed to saying transgender or genderqueer or any other term under that umbrella, because we thought, and the literature shows this is the widest umbrella term that could encapsulate the most amount of people. So started the project with a literature review. So the idea is that there's a lot of research about girls and autism and boys and autism, or women and men and autism, and there's very little for anybody in between. In fact, the first paper in this field looking at this in-between area wasn't even published until 2010. So we're just about 15 years into this entire field. And so the number of papers that have been published are limited. So these were the ones that I thought were most relevant to my research and the ones that I thought were interesting. So the first section, so you can divide the papers into three kind of subsections. The first is research that was conducted at autism clinics. The second is research conducted at gender clinics. And the third is a broad data collection. So the first set of papers, the majority of them used patient charts to see how many of the patients in the population had endorsed sex item 110, which is a wish to be the opposite sex on the child behavior checklist. So Dr. Strang reported that 5.4% of parents with children endorsed sex item 110, parents of children, sorry. This is 7.59 times higher than the 0 to 0.7% of parents who reported gender variance for their neurotypical child in the control group. The Janssen team reported that individuals diagnosed with autism were 7.76 times more likely to endorse sex item 110 than individuals from a control group. Vandermeesen reported 6.5% of adolescents and 11.4% of adults endorsed sex item 110, which is more frequent than the general population, which they found to be about 3 to 5% at the time of the study. And then George and Stokes used the gender identity and gender dysphoria questionnaire instead of the sex item 110, which is a standardized questionnaire, to determine the rate of gender dysphoria, so a subsection within this umbrella. And they found that the rate of gender dysphoria was 1.9%, which is about 135 times more than the rate of gender dysphoria in the broader population in this 2009 report. So a little bit older, but you're starting to see a trend where it's somewhere between 6 and 8% of individuals in the autism clinics that are reporting gender variance of some sort, or so their parents are reporting it. So then the second location was gender clinics. The first paper in the field that was ever published was published by Dr. DeVries and her team in 2010. She used data from a gender clinic in Amsterdam, and she found that 7.8% of the individuals coming to the clinic were diagnosed with autism. So again, we're within this 6, 7 to about 8, 9% range. Halens did a chart review at a gender clinic and reported that 6% of patient files assessed reported an autism diagnosis. And this was 6-fold higher than the rate of autism in the general population at the time. And then finally, there was a broad data collection done in 2020 by Morrier and team. And they found that GV, or gender variant individuals, were 3.03 to 6.36 times as likely to be diagnosed with autism than non-GV individuals. So I know it's a lot of numbers, but the moral of the story here is that there are 3 different types of studies, and they're all reporting very high numbers compared to control groups. All right, slide. Perfect. So the purpose of the study, as I mentioned, is the knowledge gap. So in order to provide services for individuals who fall within this knowledge gap, we have to prove that the gap exists. We have to prove that this is a need that needs filling. So that was the first purpose of the study. The second is to provide basis for gender-specific diagnostic research. And the third is there's a very serious consideration for the necessity of this research in rising rates of mental health concerns among individuals who are gender variant and diagnosed with autism. It's very important that these individuals get the support that they need. And so in order to do the research, we're going to need backing that this is necessary. So that's what this is supposed to be. All right. So the greatest hurdle we faced in getting this study off the ground was a low response rate. We sent a survey to 500-ish people on the IDEA listserv, which is a publicly available listserv for individuals who work in autism diagnosis and autism research. And we only had 34 responses. We sent it out a number of times. I sent it out, Dr. Schwartz and Dr. Morrier sent it out, and it was only 34. And only 30 were included in Section 1 analysis, 27 in Section 2, 17 in Section 3, and then Section 4 was a free response. And 6 people provided comments, but only 5 were relevant to the study. One of them was good job, so we didn't use that one. All right. So the survey itself, I mentioned Section 1, 2, 3, and 4. It can be broken down into 4 sections. So the first is biographical information. It was used for a number of reasons, which I'll get into a little bit later. Section 2 is the time period 2022 to present. Present is the time when the participant completed the survey. And then the time period 2019 to 2021 is Section 3, and there's a free response question. Next slide. Thank you. So sections 2 and 3 asked the participants to select the number of gender variant or total individuals. So total is everybody that came into the office. They had assessed and or diagnosed at the time period that they're being asked about. They were provided ranges for each question because we thought that asking for a specific number would be a barrier and discourage people from participating, as most people don't have an exact number that's easily accessible. So for the questions regarding the total population, the ranges that we provided were in increments of 25 up until 100, and then in increments of 50 up until 250. And then above 250, they had an option for fill in your own number. And then for GV population, gender variant population, it was 0, 1, and then in increments of 2 up until 9, and then 10 plus, they had the option to fill in on their own. The second qualitative analysis was of Section 4. So that was the comment section. The data was coded and analyzed using 3 keywords that we saw repeated in the comments, which were age, data, and community. All right, so part 1 is looking at sections 1, 2, and 3. So section 1 provided biographical data about the participants. So initially, the point of collecting this data was to make sure that there was no overlap. We wanted to make sure we weren't getting the same response twice from one person. The secondary point was to see if high rates are being seen in any specific assessment location or geographic location. The low response rate and kind of the wide location ranges, we went by the U.S. Census and how they provide ranges for the country. This kind of prohibited this assessment style, but we decided to include raw data in chart format for you to view here because it's important to know where data is being sourced from. You'll see the orange and the yellow are the mountain region and the west-south central region. The states represented by these regions, with the exception of just 4, have all passed a law or a policy that bans gender-affirming healthcare, and this is as of September 2023. So these bans may probably limit the number of gender variant individuals who outwardly identify as gender variant, and that could affect participants' reported numbers. So considering that half of the participants, of people that completed the study, 14 out of 30 are from these regions, I do think it's worth noting this potential variable, that it's probable that the numbers are much higher. All right, so moving on to sections 2 and 3. So this is when we ask them the number of assessed and diagnosed individuals they are seeing for both time periods and both total population and GV population. So once the data was categorized, I compared the numbers across 2 time periods and found that compared to the 2019 to 2021 data, so the earlier time period, the 2022 to present, the later time period, had more or an equal number of individuals who reported assessing gender variant clients in each of the ranges, 0 to 25, 25 to 50, those ranges, and more individuals who reported diagnosing gender variant clients in diagnosing and assessing in each of the ranges. So this indicates the number of gender variant individuals seeking an autism assessment and being diagnosed with autism is increasing as time goes on. So then section 4 analysis looked at the free response. And so again, that was coded by age, data, and community. I put in some sample quotes so you could see where we got some of these conclusions from. We found that the comments indicated that the ages the clinician diagnose are an indicator of the number of gender variant individuals they'll diagnose. So interestingly, the two individuals that provided comments in this in this range had extremely different data. So one individual assessed 350 individuals in the 2022 to present period and 720 in the 2019 to 2021 period, but claimed to have only assessed one gender variant individual. So this seemed very unlikely until we got to section 4 and saw that their comment, which provided follow-up information on their low numbers, said that they primarily assessed children under the age of 5. On the other end of the spectrum, the individual who had the highest number of gender variant diagnosis for the 22 to present period and tied for the highest number for 19 to 21 period reported that most people they assess are between 13 and 30. So significantly older. This indicates that older individuals are more likely to be experiencing this co-occurrence, and obviously that more research needs to be done for older individuals. Data was the next one. It showed that clinicians' biggest obstacle was having accurate data regarding the number of gender variant individuals they assessed and diagnosed. So we used ranges to try and circumvent this problem, but it wasn't enough to mitigate the problem. For future studies for this topic to be conducted, it would be very helpful if clinicians start keeping track of additional information of their clients, like gender identity, sexual orientation, and I'll elaborate on this in future directions. And the third is community. It emphasized the number of gender variant individuals who are open and out of the closet may be community dependent. So location does need to be considered when trying to quantify the number of gender variant individuals being assessed. So the study had a couple of major limitations that I think need to be considered moving forward. So the first is it was a very low response rate. Not much can be done if you're trying to maintain the level of anonymity that we were trying to maintain. So is life. The second was ranges. We used ranges to make life easier for clinicians to give us numbers so they felt comfortable reporting. But I think the ranges were possibly too wide, and this also, using ranges, limited analysis options. And then location options were also too wide. We again did this to increase anonymity, but I think that going into a specific community could be very beneficial. So ways to fix these limitations for the future. We could contact individuals directly. So this, I do want to say that any researcher who's watching this, and if you'd like to conduct a similar study, I think that these are worthwhile things to consider. So contacting individuals directly would obviously require a much more intense IRB, but I think might be worthwhile. And that way you could get a higher response rate. Second is ranges. Instead of using ranges, it would be helpful to ask clinicians for an exact number. Again, for this to happen, it would be necessary for clinicians to start keeping track of gender variant numbers. This would open a whole other world of exact quantitative analysis. And so if there's any takeaway from this talk, is for any clinicians on the call, start keeping track of your gender variant clients, the number you're seeing, because this type of research is not possible without numbers. The third is location options. So a qualitative analysis of section 4 highlighted the importance of considering the location the data is being collected from. So it'd be interesting to do a similar study within cities or states or specific communities. So the takeaway from the research is the number of gender variant individuals seeking an assessment and receiving a diagnosis has drastically increased just in a couple of years of this study. So we need to be prepared to provide specific resources for these individuals. And future research, it's imperative that gender identity is tracked by clinicians for it to be possible. And we should be more specific about where and how data is collected so we can better serve specific communities. All right. So thank you for your time. Thanks, everybody. I'm happy to answer any questions. My email is on the bottom of that last slide. You can always email me as well.
Sorry, any questions for Rachel? Thank you. That was very interesting. I mean, as I said, I've heard her
Well
give
done.
this data before, and every time I hear it, I learn something new from it. And it was something that really I didn't really know anything about this research area until Rachel brought it to us. So I think it's really good. And we really wanted to start this panel off with this kind of, here's some background information of kind of what's going out there. One question I have for you though, Rachel, is given kind of the political climate of what's going on, how hard do you think this research is going to be going forward? Do you think it's kind of like just a temporary thing? Do you think it's going to be ongoing? And with some of your recommendations, do you think clinicians are willing to do that given everything that's going on?
Yeah, great question. We're lucky that we started this before the current administration. I think that if it had been started later, and we had required funding, we would not have been able to receive it. A lot of papers are hesitant to publish anything that has to do with gender or gender variance or even autism at this point. So I think that that is a very real limitation that we need to be aware of in the future. The second part, what was the second? Oh, are clinicians going to be afraid to be considering this? I hope not. I really hope not. As researchers, as clinicians, we have a responsibility to the people that we are working for and with. And we can't be intimidated by those who don't entirely understand what they're afraid of. That's the only reason I think for the type of reaction that this type of research in these communities are getting is ignorance. And so I think we can't let ignorant people stand in the way of doing what's best for a community.
Another question from the audience. Did you consider that gender variance studies consider the feeling different as quantitative or qualitative in nature? And thanks, Rachel.
Um, Hi, Tyler. Good question. We considered it as quantitative because if it was done via sex item 110, because it was a clear yes or no, does your child experience any feelings of gender variance? So if it's a clear yes or no, we're considering it as quantitative. The analysis was done qualitatively because we had ranges and that made it difficult for us to quantify anything. But I think in the future it could be done as quantitative analysis. Yeah.
Okay, well,
That's
thank you again, Rachel, for coming in. And
Thanks y'all for having me.
I hear it's hot in New York where you are.
Yeah.
So hopefully you can stay cool. And good luck in medical school. And definitely, if you have other
may you
research in
not be
this area,
swarming in debt by the end of this.
yes, we would love to have you come back in, a year or two and kind of give us an update and see,
Absolutely.
what kind of changes have been made. So keep up the good work on that. And it was
Thank
great
you.
working with you on this.
It was great working
Like
with you
to
as
say.
well. Thanks so
Yeah,
much for having me.
okay. Okay, so now we're going to move over to our panel, and I will let the panelists kind of introduce themselves just because I don't want to introduce them wrong, which I am known to do. Even when I know you, I will introduce you wrong. So I will start with Erin Maurer, and then we'll go to Katie and then Matthew and kind of go through and let them give just a brief kind of who they are, why they're here, and then we'll go into the different questions and topic areas that we have for them. Okay, Erin.
Always got to do the Eren and Erin's. But my name is Erin Maurer. I just recently graduated from Mercer, getting my mental health counseling master's degree. I'm currently working under supervision at Gaia. I do a lot of narrative and play therapy, and the two people I work the most with are neurodivergent and LGBT folks, and so I see a lot of that overlap, as well as having that overlap of being both LGBT plus and autistic.
And then Katie, if you want to just give a brief introduction to yourself.
Katie, she, her, not too much to say. I left the country earlier and I've been going through the asylum process in the UK. Thankfully, I'm pretty much done on my end and I'm just waiting for a decision, which Could be tomorrow, could be in October.
And you also do work some with or participate in the Emory group as well, correct? So
Yeah,
you've been connected to this
yeah,
kind of
I've
areas.
been continuing to go to that on Zoom. It's not
Okay.
too much of trouble.
Okay. And then Matthew.
Hi everyone, I'm Matthew. I'm 29 years old. My pronouns are he, him, his. I'm also autistic and I'm also gay, which I'm part of this, I recently just graduated as well from SCAD, earning my master's in film and TV, which was pretty nice. Um, there weren't that many autistic folks there. There's just only a few, but love to be around fellow neurodivergents and autistic people as well as LGBT folks.
Okay. Okay, great.
Thank you,
We're
Matthew.
excited to hear everything you guys have to say and share about your lived experiences as we go on. So, Erin with an E, um, do you want to go through and start with the questions, or do you want me to do that? Or
Would you like to handle the diagnostic process part?
okay,
I'll handle the rest.
okay. And some of this may be difficult because I don't know how old you were when you did get diagnosed, but just kind of following up on Rachel's, presentation, do you know or do have experience with or know people that have, if it hasn't been directly with you, did you have any difficulties getting an autism diagnosis due to your LGBTQ identity, or do you think there was some kind of overlap there? Do you think people kind of took you both seriously on both sides, or that? I know most of you were probably diagnosed as kids, so you're like, I really don't know how to answer this.
Um, I was in fact diagnosed as a child, and so I don't have much memory of it, but I will say that even though I didn't know about my identity growing up, I was always a little boyish and not fitting the social norms around that. And I wouldn't be surprised if that actually helped me get a diagnosis in some ways, because there were some clear, obvious things where there were social expectations of gender that I simply wasn't following.
And
So,
so again, I'll go on.
so I can't exactly remember how old I was, but I think I was like 4 or 5 when I got diagnosed. Um, I didn't realize I was LGBT growing until I was like probably like 25 or 26. But I've kind of shown signs of it growing up. Maybe I just didn't realize it.
Okay. And so what recommendations would you give to an individual who is LGBTQIA plus, who is seeking an autism diagnosis? So like knowing kind of what what would you recommend to someone who's kind of going the other way, is looking for the autism diagnosis?
One thing I'd like to say is that both people with autism and people with LGBT are a little bit on the outskirts of things. There are definitely doctors that might not always treat us well. I think keeping an eye out for finding LGBT plus mental health workers, looking for those rainbows, looking for those disclaimers in the thing saying either who they are or what they work with. Make sure that when you're looking for these spaces that they're making room for both of your identities. And that you're being respected wherever you go. There are always more options out there.
Personally, I would say, like reach out to your, like your, if you have like a IEP specialist or maybe like a local doctor. So I've had some friends who said that their self-diagnosis, which is valid. So if you're self-diagnosed, if you're not sure, most likely see a professional since they know more about the spectrum.
Okay. And so what advice would you give to professionals who provide autism assessments, when a gender diverse individual is coming to them seeking that autism assessment? Because I know in the past, a lot of time people would view kind of the gender diversity issue is kind of, oh, that's one of their special interests, or that's kind of their interest, and not see it as an identity, you know? So like what kind of, and we've kind of changed, hopefully, many of us have changed, you know, from that, but what advice would you give to the professionals that are in this field?
I'd say one of the most important things right now is to make sure that you're holding a safe space and making sure you are public about holding a safe space. That, like I said before, people are going to be looking for those rainbows, those flags, those notices that, like, it's a little scary out here right now. And so knowing where is going to be a safe place is important, and also making sure that you maintain that safe space, that once you put up that rainbow, that you're still involved in the conversation, whether that's coming to cool panels like this to keep informed, or doing your own research online. And like, sometimes it's the smallest things that make a difference. Like if you can keep up on current language that's used, it can make a difference if someone is coming to you and saying like, if you have to explain every part of your identity, that can be a little bit intrusive. But if you know, some of the basic labels, there are always going to be micro labels and new things coming out that not everyone is going to keep on top of. But the fact that you cared enough to look into some of them and to figure some of them out can make a real difference when meeting someone and feeling safe around them.
Personally, I would say make sure that your client is like make sure that they're really comfortable. Like now get like I don't want to say like don't get them to open up. Like if they don't want to do it, don't press them to do it. Like or personally don't get too personal with them until you actually get to know them and they feel comfortable. So I just my guess is just make them more comfortable.
Okay, that's all we have on kind of the diagnostic issue process, kind of following up on Rachel's, because I mean, I know there, according to her research and other research, there is, you know, a greater prevalence of individuals seeking autism diagnoses. And so really, you know, making sure professionals are aware that it's it's there, and you know you're going to be coming, and you know what to do and how to make you feel comfortable, I think is important, you know, as someone who does a lot of diagnosing, you know, making sure that everyone who comes to me is feeling comfortable. I think, you know, hearing from you guys is something that really helps me going forward. So thank you for opening up on all of those suggestions for us. Okay. So Erin, with an E, I will let you kind of go from here.
All right, we're about to enter the meat and the potatoes of this panel, so I hope everyone's ready. The first question I'd like to ask each of you: at what age did you realize you were LGBT or QIA plus?
I realized it at kind of an odd time. It was in high school, and when I first came into high school, there was one singular queer couple that was out, and it was a group of girls that everyone knew were together. And that couple was allowed in our relatively progressive high school. And then as soon as they graduated, I came out by holding hands in public with my girlfriend. And it was interesting because a lot of the people in the area really wanted to be supportive, but weren't exactly sure how. I had a lot of like the straight girls of the school come up and like, oh my gosh, you guys are so brave. I ship you. You're like kind of awkward interactions that were trying to be
We're a
positive.
little confused, but they had the spirit, is what you're saying.
They had the spirit. They had the spirit. And
compassion and empathy.
Oh yeah, and I would always rather see that than some of the other things. But me and my girlfriend for a while were in fact the only two queer folks in the school. Though I, at that point, was going through my beautiful journey of identifying as straight, then bi, then gay, then demisexual, then bi again, until I eventually found queer. And I found a lot of comfort in an umbrella term that kind of held all the shifting differences of the micro labels that I found. And I think that there's something really powerful.
Like autism, LGBT is also a sort of a spectrum if you think about it.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of difference and change that happens in a person, and there's a lot of pressure on finding the label for you. And so I found it really powerful to have an identification that was all about just like, I'm a little different and still loving myself.
So that identity helped you feel better about who you are and
Mhm.
so being your identity as LGBT gave you strength, gave you
Oh,
sense of purpose in life.
and I think that's true of both identifying as LGBT and neurodivergent. Like having a word for how you feel and how you interact can make such a difference in being able to understand and care about yourself.
Good. Matthew, how about you next?
Well, personally, I'd probably say when I was like maybe like in when I did my undergrad, like probably like a few years ago. Um, so like at first I thought I was bisexual because I've been showing like both interest in guys and girls, but then as I got older, I'm like I decided I'm more into dudes, and I'm still trying to find my dude. I know he's out there somewhere, but I think that's more of a gay dude. So and I like go, hey, that's okay, because to be honest, the reason why I thought I said I was bi, because to be honest, I was afraid that people would think I'm not gay, okay, but even though I used to be teased as gay when I was in elementary school, but I didn't know about that until like a few years ago. So I'd personally say probably like maybe like 5 or 7 years ago.
So you're saying that with more knowledge on sexuality, you were able to better figure out what your identity was?
Yeah, yeah.
Interesting. Katie, last but not least, let's hear your story.
When I realized, I think it was I realized I was bi at first. I want to say I was 14 or 15, high school. I came out junior year, and it was something that was I was more used to. I knew my aunt was friends with a gay couple growing up, so it wasn't something I was completely unfamiliar with. I think I realized I was trans at 15, maybe some egg moments before then, but my memory's a total mess.
But from what you do remember, you're saying that from being exposed to different parts of the community, you were able to better understand yourself by being around a variety of people.
Yeah.
That's very good. All right, our next question. If autism and LGBTQIA are two different identities, how do you tie them together? Katie, we'll start with you first this time.
I'm not really sure how to tie them together. I know there's a lot of overlap. I was
Let's go
going
with
to
the
the North,
overlap.
yeah, I was going to the North Fulton Trans Support Group up in Roswell when I lived in the area. And I knew a lot of people from there that were autistic as well. I think someone might have even asked that one day in group, and like half the people said they were.
Matthew?
So I'm seriously saying they're both unique in different ways, honestly. Like, autism and being LGBT. I mean, they're both something to be proud of, honestly. Like, the number of people you introduced me to, Aaron, all the great people during your outings and whatnot. Like half of the guys I already knew, like Sebastian, and of course, we've been friends for like a long, long time, and I do have some LGBT friends who I mainly met. First, I met them in high school, and then during my undergrad had a GC. It was very diverse. That's where I got more kick into it because we had some cool groups like gender fluid groups, and then I met more and I learned about. I mean, for me personally, I'm a male, honestly, hey, but I gotta love me. I have some trans friends, but I love them because they're still human, no matter what.
All right, Erin, you're next.
I mean, I could talk about this for a while, but I think
Let's
a
just
lot
go
of
with
it.
3 minutes. Let's just do 3 minutes
Yeah.
for this one.
Oh no, yeah. Feel free to cut me off if I go too much, but I feel like a lot of it comes down to social expectations and how people with autism don't follow social expectations as society wants them to. Humans have this huge range of presentations of physical and mental and of romantic and sexuality. But a lot of times in society, we pretend that everything is just male, female, heterosexual pairings. And once you get past the like middle school level biology, you realize it's just not true. Like from intersexuality to the wide range of romantic pairings we've seen over history and time, there are so many more experiences than just that small box. And so for someone with autism who sees past a lot of like social expectations or is and sometimes fully blind to them, it can be easier to come to that recognition within ourselves that, hey, I don't fit perfectly into these boxes because those boxes are so small. Like no one is always 100% the gender that they are born with. Like there is no such thing as a man who is always perfectly emotionally reserved, is a hunter and a preparer and never needs to be taken care of. And there's no such thing as a woman who's always romantic and pink and loving and never angry. Like we fall outside of those boxes all of the time. But with people with autism, that black and white thinking realizes that, hey, we're not actually following those rules, and those rules don't always make sense to us. And so I think that some of it is just the willingness not to follow the expectations of society.
All right. Yeah, I'm going to give you guys 1 minute for this next question because it's going to be a quick one. Which of your current identities, LGBTQIA plus or autism, was first recognized by yourself and or others? Matthew?
Personally, I gotta say autism because yeah, I gotta say autism or mainly both because most people think I'm LGBT because of the sound of my voice, honestly. But I kind of probably say mainly autism.
Okay. Erin?
I definitely got diagnosed earlier on. I think I was always showing signs of a little bit of gender queerness, but that it hadn't quite been pegged down the same way that autism had because I was so traditional in my showing of autism.
Katie?
Yeah, I gotta say the autism as well. I think I was diagnosed when I was like 6 or somewhere around there. I remember growing up going through school with like an IEP, getting additional help. So I don't remember life without it, so to say.
My
I
sympathy,
don't remember life
on the
before
IEP.
being diagnosed.
My sympathies on the IEP. All right. Is there any advice, one advice per person? Is there any advice you would give a professional working with an autistic individual who is gender diverse? Katie?
Hear them out and really listen to them. Like I've had people discount my queerness or my gender diversity based on my autism. Having come out, I think it was 2014 when it trans awareness started to go up more. I think that's when Caitlyn Jenner become relevant. So just we really hear people out and not go by that sort of stuff. Not say they're
Yeah.
imitating it or anything like that.
All right. Thank you, Katie. Matthew, you're up.
Personally, I would say be patient with them, and just just listen to them, like just because it's like they have a lot they want to say, right? And just don't just don't misjudge them, honestly. Just relate to them, and if you can't, that's okay. But at least just listen for what they have to say, okay, and just be comfortable with them.
Erin?
Yep, I think I'm gonna continue on a theme, but be curious and ask questions, I think is one of the biggest things. That being said, some of those questions are better asked to Google or queer educators online rather than assuming the first gender diverse person you meet has all of the answers. But I think that even then, you still want to be asking questions like, what are your pronouns? Even if you don't immediately clock that they might not have the typical pronouns. or what will make you comfortable in this situation is important, making sure it's part of that conversation. Try to keep that to expanding your own ideas of these things and making sure that you are putting energy into understanding and not demanding energy from the other person to tell you what they need.
All right. We'll save the questions for close to the end, but thank you for these very good questions. All right, the next question we have. Do you feel you need to disclose your identity and sexuality to others? And if so, and if not, when is it acceptable or not acceptable to disclose? Matthew, we'll start with you.
Personally, I would say no, because not everybody needs to know about it. Like only if you're comfortable sharing with it, but only doing it for the right person. So personally, I would just say only if like it depends on who the person with you're with, honestly. So, like, if you feel open to them, honestly, yeah. But if you don't feel comfortable, then that's totally okay.
Katie,
What was the question one more time? So
do you geez, let me just double check. Do you feel like you need to disclose your sexuality to others, and when is it acceptable or not acceptable to disclose?
I don't really go around disclosing it, or if I'm gonna get serious about being in a relationship with someone, I will, but
So the
I
relationship
have,
based on trust, but otherwise you would rather not for safety and other factors.
it's not so much that, it's just that I don't feel the need to go around screaming I'm bisexual to everyone. But
No, there may be job requirements in which they ask you about that, and you may feel uncomfortable disclosing your sexuality on a job application, for example.
yeah, I'm not doing anything like that. I honestly don't
Okay.
even know if they're allowed to ask that over here.
I hope. Let's hope so.
I'd hope not.
Erin, you're last for this one.
Yeah. So I hold an interesting position on this, being in a professional position that is also working with people in the community. When I was taking my classes, we spent weeks talking about this because self-disclosure is a very important thing to be aware of in therapy. And it's really a difficult balance to set up. And everyone has different comfort levels with them. But I think one thing is in the helping position, the most important question for when it is appropriate and when it's not is when you think it will help the client. If you think that they will feel more comfortable, more safe, more trusting of your advice, if you can disclose something about yourself, then you should do it. And I think that if you are doing it just to like win points or to do it at the client, then that might not be the most appropriate thing. But I think that there is a lot of worth of being if you are in a position of power, especially being able to disclose those things about yourself. Like I'm relatively open at work and with my clients about my identities if it comes up naturally, but I'm also not going to bring it up out of the blue. And I think there's also sometimes a danger of accidentally outing someone else if you're suddenly like, oh, hey, I'm gay too. It's like, you don't know who's around them, who they've told, what their situation is.
There have been a number of cases where people have been targeted simply for appearing or looking LGBT, even if they were not. So it's understandable that wanting to protect your identity in a very intolerant world. All right, so we finished with the identity part of our questions. Now we're moving on to family and social life. It's hard enough for many people who are either queer or autistic, especially both. What are some struggles that you have personally faced that you wished others like you could be prepared for? And how would you have them prepare for said challenges and struggles? Matthew, I'd like to let you start this one out.
Repeat the question one more time so I can better understand it.
So, what are some challenges that you have personally faced, being queer or autistic, that you wish others like you could be prepared for? And how would you have people prepare for those challenges?
Well, mainly, I haven't had any issues on the queer part, but as for autistic, sometimes I struggle a lot, like just being around like people who are not autistic because they don't understand things like how we function or we need or some things bother us. And just personally just say, just like explain to them like, hey, I'm autistic, this is what I like and don't like. So or just be patient with me. And just like personally they just don't understand honestly.
Thank you, Matthew. Katie, I'm sure you would have some fun stuff to share.
Yeah, my coming out, I came out as trans, didn't go all that well. It didn't go over the best with my parents. They said a lot of stuff. Like, I remember one of them was everything going on in the media. They thought I was trying to imitate it or something like that. They said something about me wanting a new identity because it was a couple months after I finished high school and everyone was going off to college besides for me. And some other stuff I don't really have the spoons to get into, but the advice I give to anyone is just
how would you prefer people be prepared for those challenges down the road?
I don't know how you can really prepare for someone reacting like that. What I would say is to make sure you don't just go back in the closet like I did, so to speak. To make sure you're firm, you stand up for yourself, you advocate for yourself as often as you have to get the help you need, because it was awful for me.
It can be really hard when your own family treats you as something different than their own child just because of an identity.
Thankfully, it's gotten much better now. I never had issues with grandparents, but the hurt still stays.
Based grandparents, then.
Yes.
That's good. All right, Erin, time to deliver some good stuff.
I always got it for you, the good stuff. All right. So for me, I think the biggest one is that both as an autistic person and someone that is queer, you realize that a lot of the societal rules are fake. However, they're still going to affect you. That if you go outside, there are going to be strangers who are assuming that you're accidentally failing to meet the social expectations, or even are mad that you're not meeting the social expectations, and will try to help move you back towards them. I think that you've got to keep yourself safe, but also not worry about the random strangers out there and what they're thinking. You need to decide for yourself what rules you want to play by and purposely make decisions on, like, am I going to cut my hair the way I want? Am I going to have fidget toys even though it looks a little strange? Like, you get to choose what level of masking, what level of public you are, but it's important that you choose purposefully.
Fair enough. All right, we got one more question for the family social life. How does being autistic and LGBTQIA+ impact your interactions with others? Erin, would you like to start off?
Sure. So it very much depends on the people. The mean girls I went to middle school with, badly. But nowadays I have some really great friends and family, and it's so magical to be able to connect with them on these deeper levels. Like finding someone who accepts you who you are, just performing, can be really amazing. And you can have such meaningful connections on this deeper wavelength once you find people who are willing to accept and enjoy and love you for all of these different things. I mean, I've definitely met people who have a lot of the same identities with me that I don't always agree with. But I also have found people who have had a shared experience that is rare, that when we can connect on those moments just is so empowering.
Wonderful. Matthew, do you need the repeat of the question?
Yeah, one more time, please.
How does being autistic and how does being gay and autistic for you impact your interactions with others?
Well, it really depends on who I'm hanging out as well. So like, if I'm hanging out with the right people, so like, if I'm hanging out with fellow gay people, fellow LGBT, or just fellow autistics, I'm just myself, honestly. But if I'm still with a different person, I still remain that same person. Like, just because they're not like, just because they're not autistic or gay, doesn't mean I need to change my whole personality.
Fair enough. And Katie, how does being trans and autistic affect your interactions with others?
I'm not really sure. Thankfully I passed pretty well, but passed as female pretty well, and then I wouldn't say I masked the autism, but I've had times where I've told people and they were really surprised to hear that.
But you have found people where you don't have to wear your mask, so to speak.
Yeah, I don't feel like I've ever really masked well, or like I mask well at all, and outside of just high school bullying, I don't remember having any issues anywhere.
What about online?
Ugh,
Oh yeah, I felt
not.
that one. I felt that groan.
Well, the worst was like right-wing Christian people that gave me crap.
In other words, people need to stay off Twitter, correct?
Yeah.
Gotcha. All right.
Blue
Thanks.
Sky is so much less toxic.
I am actually trying to get that. One of the things I also appreciate is that if people are being nasty to you, there is a moderator team.
I did not know that. I'm mainly just on Reddit.
I mean, it's not perfect, but they have one. All right, so we're on to our final set of questions. Just 3 more, then we'll go to Q&A and wrap up. In your opinion, what are some skills that you feel queer autistics need to learn either by themselves or through others? One of these could be masking. What are some other ones? Katie, what do you think?
Probably self-acceptance is the first one. And being sure to advocate for yourself, being sure to not delay doing stuff that you know you want to do.
Loving yourself is often the hardest thing for a lot of people.
Exactly.
Matthew, what about you? What are some skills that, in your opinion, you feel queer autistics need to learn either by themselves or through others?
Just be who you are, honestly. You know you, and no one else knows yourself. No one else knows you but yourself. So there's no, if you just more self-confidence, that's all that matters. And I would say, hey, if you just think about yourself, hey, ask yourself, what what do I love about myself, or like what can I do to make myself a good person? So person, as I say, more self-confidence.
I see. And Erin, time to spill the tea.
I think the biggest thing is being able to listen to yourself. I think that very early on in life, people of both communities are told who they're supposed to be, how they're supposed to act, what is wrong with them, what they should be doing. And it can block out that inner voice that tells you what is actually important to you. And that if you want to be able to advocate for yourself, make things better, make yourself feel comfortable and happy, you have to first be able to listen to yourself to know those things. And like, some of those things have a price tag for sure, but being able to consciously make the decision of what is worth conforming to and what's worth the fight makes a difference in how you're able to live.
All right. I'm sorry to jump into the next question, but I'd really love to hear your thoughts first. I think you guys are going to love this one. What do you feel could be done to improve the lives of queer autistics?
This is right back at me.
Sorry, but you just give so many good answers.
I have a lot to say. I think the biggest one for that is understanding that all human experience exists on a spectrum, that like really accepting that into your heart, that people are different, that no matter what your expectation is, there's some people who are going to do it in a totally different way, and expanding compassion to those people and giving spaces for them to do as they please, with as long as no someone isn't hurting you. They should be able to do whatever they want in their own little world. And I think that being able to accept that, like, you're not going to understand everything, not everything is for you, but that it's okay for people to be different, and people are always going to be different no matter how you feel about it.
Wonderful. Katie, what advice do you have for us? What advice would you want to give to on improving the lives of queer autistics?
You mean like day-to-day lives, clinical setting, or also?
Anything. Just fire off whatever ideas are running in your mind.
Basically, just what I've said before, taking everyone seriously, helping everyone where they need help. I'm stuck a little bit.
It's fine. It's fine. You don't have to answer a question if you're not sure. What I would recommend as a bisexual autistic myself is that we try to find ways to explain things, to put into words our differences so that we can put it in a way to explain to people so they can better understand and respect us. We need to show people that queer autistics matter and are part of society and contribute to society. If we can show that we matter and that we contribute and are of value, people are more willing to accept. They have less excuses to hate. That's the optimistic approach, at least. Matthew?
Well, I would
What do
personally
you
just
feel
say,
is done to improve the lives of queer autistics?
well, personally, I would just say, just as I said before, just, stay away from closed-minded people because those are the kind of people you don't want to be around. Because that's, unfortunately, not everybody in this world will accept us for who they are. If they don't do it, then we can't change that. I just say, just steer away from negativity and just be around people you can more relate to, honestly.
Very good. All right, we got one last question. Great job, all of you. You've come so far on this. What advice would you give to the other queer autistics watching this panel? Matthew, we'll start with you.
Well, personally, just remember our advice we gave. Just be yourself. Just yourself. You know yourself the best. Never change yourself for others. And if others don't accept you, then then just stay away from them. Like just be around open-minded people.
Katie, do you feel comfortable answering this question?
Yeah, I think so.
Go for it. You got
The
this.
advice I'd mainly give is, especially if you're trans and you can go stealth with the political climate, I definitely would.
Erin, do you want to end the questions for tonight?
Yeah. So I do want to say it's important to keep aware of those safety things. We are getting to a point where being aware of asylums, being aware of safe spaces is important, but there is still hope. And I think my big advice is that you are not alone and it will get better.
All right, I'm going to sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I know you've heard it before, but like, I really mean it from the heart. And like, so many people are feeling the same way you are. No matter where you are in your journey, there's someone out here who is feeling that. And I think that things do get better, as annoying as it sounds, and like it won't get better right away. And sometimes things even get worse. And, I'm scared too. But I think that there's also the fact that we have made it this far, that we have survived so much and that we're not going to go anywhere. I think that you have to always find hope and make the world better, because whether that's taking direct action or just surviving, the world needs people like us, and we need to support each other, and we need to hold on to that hope.
And now we are on to the final part of our panel, the questions and answers. Michael, do you want to come back for this one?
I will come back. I don't know if I will have anything to add. you guys have given such great information. I've learned so much. And things like this have really, I think everyone needs to, hear what you guys have to say. It really has given me things to think about for my professional career, even personal career, personal interactions with people. And I think the advice you've given is great, and it's stuff that I feel that I can pass on to other families and individuals that I meet. And really, I'm glad you guys agreed to do this panel for us, and I hope you don't mind. I'm probably going to be giving out your emails all the time to people. Yeah, so I mean,
So
this was a
there
great
is one
panel.
question we have from the audience. Do you know the story of former ophthalmologist, professional tennis player Renee Richards? I'm going to say no,
Yeah.
sorry. And someone also said,
Yeah.
it's so hard to find community when I'm so anxious around people.
No, I
Bam,
was sorry. I
could
just
not
want to
agree
say, I want to kind of follow up on that question you had, since no one really had the answer, and I'm probably showing my age, but I was a child. So I wasn't as old as I am now. But Renee Richards was a trans professional tennis player in the 70s, I think, who really had a lot of discrimination but against her, but really did go and did, and I could be messing this up, so whoever asked the question could be, piping in the answer as well. But knowing that kind of history, that it's been there for a long time, trans people trying to kind of break through on profession. But I remember her name. Growing up and hearing about Renee Richards and professional tennis, because everyone that I grew up with watched tennis or played tennis, and so she was kind of like a big name to kind of go through. I don't know if I would say she was like a role model to people at the
won the
time,
US
but
Open in the 1970s.
yeah, so but I think nowadays people are really appreciating what she went through and the courage she had to go through. And I mean, I think you guys are right in line with her and kind of breaking down those barriers and letting people know that, you know, you have great experiences to talk about and what you can do. So keep up the good work, all of you, really.
So in the next question, how can one find community if you're anxious around people? This is open question and answer. So if any of you want to answer this one, go ahead.
Start online. See if you can find like local groups. Like I know the Atlanta Autism Socials group. Correct me if I'm wrong, it's been a minute. Has somewhat of an online following. So if there's like online support groups you can get and sort of introduce yourself, meet some of the people virtually before you go in person, that might be a way to ease a lot of anxiety.
I'll also say that when you're looking for groups and worried about it, you don't have to jump directly to this is a group of only autistic queer people. There are lots of other community spaces that are really loving and accepting if you can find them. Like I occasionally participate in roller derby, or I go to a trivia night that like it's queer people all coming together and doing an activity together. And so that helps with some of my anxiety of like knowing what we're going to do. But I think overall, just finding what works best for you, take those steps, even if they're small ones. There are people out there who are just as anxious but interested in socializing as you.
Anyone else? Katie? I mean, no, Katie, you did answer. Matthew, what about you?
Personally, I can't think of anything right now. It's a really tough one, so but let me ask the question one more time.
How do you hold on? Let me just get right back to it. How do you find community when you're so anxious around people? Or what
Oh,
advice would you give to people who are anxious around others but trying to find community?
well, just give yourself some space, honestly. Like, if you want to just like some people just want to be alone, So it's perfect to say, give yourself some space. Or if you just need to step out, just do it.
All right. Are there any other questions? Yes, you are most welcome, friend. Thank you for that excellent question. I completely understand. What I would actually recommend for those who are anxious around people is finding, again, a common talking point. For me, RWBY is a show where the protagonist is autism coded and asexual coded, and two more of the protagonists in the four protagonists of the show are bisexual and pansexual. So finding a crowd that shares your interests while listening to said crowd allows you to find people who will give you the opportunity, let you into their circle, let you into their community. Finding those shared experiences, those shared interests. So roller derby, you may be anxious around people, but you love roller derby. So if you're enjoying the skating, or if you're enjoying the rolling and you're around other people, you will eventually become part of that community. You will eventually feel more comfortable with the people who share your interests. I enjoy exercise. Spotting someone at the gym, helping out, trading exercise tips, complimenting others on their gains. It's a way to it's a way to feel less anxious. But that's one way to go about it. Now, we still have a little time left. Are there any other questions? You guys have been giving us so many good ones so far.
I don't know if you guys can all see the chat, but someone is saying, thank you for this. They've worked in the autism and developmental medicine field and have noticed this connection a lot, and I'm happy to see that it's being seen and talked about. And I think that kind of speaks what a lot of people are thinking right now. So, again, thank you for your time to do this. I know for some of you it's probably a little nerve-wracking to be asked and, all of that, but, we're so happy you all kind of brought your own experiences here. It was really good.
Michael, sorry to interrupt. There is one more question in the question and answer if anybody wants to provide an answer.
Oh, let me say. Have you participated in school gay straight alliance type clubs or other autism or LGBTQ support groups?
Yes, I have. Going back to like my high school experience where there were a lot of very well-meaning. We did eventually have a gay straight alliance. There were a lot of allies involved, but I also think that you always want to have allies involved because it gives a little bit of cover of like, if you're going there, it doesn't mean that you have to come out to engage with it. And I also, from there, got to see a really interesting shift in the kind of environment where I went from the only gay couple in the school to, by the time I graduated, gay marriage had become legal, it had become part of the conversation. And suddenly every freshman that came in had their own label and their own identity and were exploring things and willing to like figure things out and kind of seeing live the difference it made to have those conversations out in the open.
You're getting lots of thank yous from all over Georgia, the United States. We have someone from Montreal here too. So, you guys are having a far reach. So, okay, so it doesn't look like there's anything else coming in. Again, I want to thank you all, for telling us about your lived experiences and for Rachel kind of kicking us off on her research and kind of starting off the whole discussion and what's going on. And hopefully, as Eren with an I said, this will end and we can go forward and we'll be able to move and things will be positive. And I think you 4 or 5, including Eren with an E, are really going to be some of the leaders in this field going forward and really making sure this is, on top of people's minds and, making sure professionals, individuals, people going through what you went through, feel supported in going through. And thank you again for doing this with us, especially Katie, who is probably like, probably like 3 a.m. where you are now.
It's half past midnight. It's still early.
Okay. though, but thank you for coming in, this late, and we really appreciate it and all the insight you had, and especially, your experience with having to, seek the asylum and all of that. So
I
again,
would, all right, if y'all want me to, I can touch on that a bit more, like explain what I've had to go
oh yeah,
through.
why don't you do that while we have
Since
the end? Just kind of, we can end with that, kind of wrap up and what's going on with that.
All right. So I initially came over here to visit my partner and some other friends. Got in the country the 18th of January. So I haven't even been in the States one day of a second term, which has been beyond incredible for my mental health. I've spoke with an attorney before I did anything. She told me to go ahead and do it sooner rather than later. So a couple days later, I called to set up my intake interview, which was like a week and a half after that. Got to go up to London and be fingerprinted and photographed. Had like a 30-minute basic interview, just more or less getting background on the general explanation on why I made the claim, but I didn't need to present any evidence or heavy detail quite yet. Sent me on my way. I was only there for 2 or 3 hours, thank God. And I want to say it was 2 months later, I got an email saying I had the date for my next interview, the substantive one where you lay out all your evidence and everything. They gave me 6 weeks notice. Thankfully, that was in Portsmouth, which is like a 30-minute drive for me, maybe. Didn't have to go back up to London, thank God. So I had that. It was a video interview that took all but an hour and a half. And then I had 5 days to submit further evidence. They asked in particular for medical records proving that I was trans and a note from a local support group I didn't go into here. Got that filed, got my statement and 8 other statements filed and some other stuff, and now I'm just waiting for a decision. It's been 2 weeks since that window closed, so I literally could hear anything tomorrow, or it could be a couple more months, which is the more likely scenario.
Hey, well, good luck with all of that,
Thank
and
you.
keep us updated on how that went. And again, we'll probably be giving out your email to people if you don't mind, if they have questions
Not
about
at
it.
all.
I did want to touch on the idea of safety during times like this, because it can be very difficult. And for some people, it makes the most sense to get asylum somewhere else, to move somewhere that they feel safer. But I also think that, like, me personally, I know I have a lot of privilege of passing a little bit better, and I already have a certain level of education and placement in my field. And so I've definitely thought about when is the time to leave, because I think for all of this, there is a time. But I think I also, while I'm here, want to do my best to put my voice out there and protect the people who might not be able to leave and might, hang around where, like, I live in a red state and I'm aware of some of the things going on around me could get to a dangerous level, but that I'm still everyone has to decide for themselves when that go time is, and there's no right or wrong answer about it.
So I just want to say, I know it wasn't easy to come and get all this stuff you guys had off your chest, but I want to thank you for being brave enough to do all this. You guys are awesome.
And thank you, Eren, for getting this panel together and really pushing us to do it and making sure we did it right.
Well, if we can do something like this, let's hope other autism organizations will be similarly inspired to gather together a diverse group of LGBTQIA people on the spectrum and do it. Let us be a blueprint,
Pioneer.
a rough draft.
But thank you again, all for this. Thank you all for who, joined us. And again, we will be sending out the recording as well as any resources to the email address that you registered for. Next month, July, we are taking a break because of summer and vacations. And then in August, we are going to have a hybrid event where we'll have some in person and then some virtual, where two members of the AAC board will be talking on IEPs and 504 plans and kind of how to help, you know, once school started and, you know, what we can do to support. And so be looking out for that. And then the next one we have, I think, is September after that. We will be having a virtual meeting on internet safety and things like that. So be on the lookout for that. Follow our social media posts because you will get the save the dates and the registration links, but we'll make sure that everyone who's registered for any of our programs gets all the information as well. And thank you all again for spending Tuesday night with us. I guess, and Monday morning or Wednesday morning for some of you. You know, good luck, Katie. And again, thank you
Thank
all
you.
for
Of course.
taking your time to do this. We appreciate it. And I know I learned a lot, and I'm sure everyone else did. Thank you. Okay, everyone have a good night.